So, at the last minute, my cousin called and says, "Do you want to go see the eclipse?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Well, because we got cousins in Nashville, and they own a recording studio." He said, "Well, we can, crash there." So of course, we didn't. Well, we went there, but we certainly weren't invited to sleep there because they had enough of their own problems. But we left on a Saturday morning, and we stopped first in Charleston, West Virginia, the state capital, which has a beautiful gold dome. And then next evening, we stopped in Elizabethville, Kentucky. And so this is a whole new trip for us because this is miles that we've never driven before, either one of us. So it is me, Roz, my cousin, and a little beagle. That was, of course, the random element that made it all lots of fun. And we took my Volvo. I wired up the Volvo with a power pole strip in the back right by the fuse box, and just kind of randomly snaked the wires around to the front seat, and I put a little vacuum mount up front, and I could extend the front panel of the FT790. So, and then the speakers had to also be extended, so I could use an earphone or anyway. To make a long story short, she didn't want to hear this buzzing in her ear. My cousin, I didn't like the way he drove, so I drove most of the trip. So it was very hard to actually play with the radio. And then I have this dog that's jumping in my lap if I'm sitting in the back seat. So nonetheless, I spent quite a few hours trying to figure out how to program the FT790 because I sure wasn't going to do it by hand. And so that's what I will relate to you how I went about it. Next slide. Okay, you have a lot of ways of finding these repeaters. There's the ARRL printed repeater directory. And apparently that information finds its way to rffinder.net, which is a service that well, everyone wants a little money here and there, so there's these all have little fees to which they all claim is to support the the server, and not necessarily to make a whole bundle of money. So there was rffinder.net, the ham k5ehx.net, and artscipub.com, which also makes a repeater directory. Next. Okay, so you may all be familiar with that book. It's quite complete, and it appears that every one of these repeater directories is selective. That is, they don't all have the same thing, and if you define your search, Lord knows what you're going to get. It's really it's really tricky. Next. Okay, so here's a page out of the ARRL directory, and you see we're listed W1EE, but as well as the 2 meter and the 440, but doesn't say DMR. So you guys need a.
Yeah, we got to update that.
There's a lot of these directories you're missing in some, and none of them have your DMR.
Yeah.
But I don't know who. Anyway, next.
They only accept submissions at a certain time of the year, and you have to get it. And I know it's a lot of finagling around this bureaucracy, but you can get it in. I'm going to make sure we look into that.
Okay, well, each of these services need an update of what we do.
With the W1EE, we have 2 different DLs.
And that too. That'll drive people crazy. Okay. Now, RT Systems makes a set of software and cables to connect to virtually every radio that's made. and they get $50 for every radio that you own, because not every cable is useful for more than 1 or 2 radios. So they got you kind of, you know, but it's good software. I mean, it works. So you can do it several ways. You can first, of course, you could find data with those other services and cut and paste, go to Excel and create everything in the format that RT Systems wants, and then copy a spreadsheet of all your frequencies into RT Systems, but you have to be in the right columns for offset, frequency and offset, and all that information, and call signs. But there's a second way, is if you fire up the RT Systems program, there's a communications menu, and that will bounce you back to RF Finder and let you do the work interactively between the 2 programs. Next. Okay, so here's the screen from RT Systems. Just the screenshot. You got modes, frequency, the receive frequency, offsets, and all that for each channel. Next. Okay, so with RT Systems, you don't even have to, there's no manual, first of all, that comes with it. I mean, everything's online. So when you tell it to go to the communications menu and you want to send data to your radio, an instruction menu will pop up telling you the steps of pushing the buttons on the program and on your radio. And no 2 radios are the same, because I tried this on 2 different radios with 2 different, sets of program and cables. So in the case of the FT790, there's a little mini DIN plug on the back of the radio, and connect that to a USB cable, your computer, and then it tells you to hold the megahertz button to rotate a dial, to get the word clone to come up, push band set button. I mean, these radios are not intuitive at all. And I must tell you, do not try this while you're driving. This radio is not only, it is totally inoperable while you're driving, unless you know that you're on one frequency like a cab driver. But as a ham, you will totally be distracted using this thing. So the limited time that I used it, I certainly was not driving. I was sitting in the back, and there wasn't anything to hear on the radio. So I said, let me play with the ham set. So there was not much time devoted to actually communicating.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Would any of the programs that you looked at, for instance, where you could just put in your route?
Yes.
And it would tell you which
Yes.
stations would be located along
Yes,
the route?
we'll get to that.
Okay.
Next. Okay, so this is, let's see, this slide is just some of the listings that come up, and it's just a sample, again, a screenshot. Next. Okay, now here's the RF Finder program, route search. So I put in since I did pay them the $20 or whatever they wanted, I signed in, I gave it an origin, a destination, and I can put in waypoints. So I said, give me all the repeaters from Times Square to New Haven by way of Stamford and Norwalk. Because it might have picked another route. And says distance off the road. So you could say 1 mile, 5 miles, and that, because you will get a very large number of responses. It was, that's one thing in doing this. The second thing is, you do not want to make a very long distance in your search. because then if you're going to put it into your radio and tell it to scan, you could have, 100 stations. So what you want to be able to do is group them. And the radios let you do that. So I broke this trip up into about eight different segments, like Connecticut to New York. I had to pick up my cousin in Brooklyn. Then I had a second from the middle of New Jersey out to Harrisburg. Then I went from Harrisburg to Charleston, West Virginia as a segment, and from Charleston to Elizabethville to Nashville. Then I picked up the Nashville repeaters. As I say, it's an exercise in learning how to set it up, not necessarily in how to communicate. So then went from Nashville to Oak Ridge, and there's a great science museum in Oak Ridge, it's the National Science and Energy Museum, which has remnants of the Manhattan Project there, like the Calutron, the separating device for the uranium isotopes.
Did you bring back any isotopes?
No, I didn't. No, just more t-shirts. This is my Nashville trip shirt. I have a Tesla t-shirt I picked up there. It glows in the dark, and the periodic table of elements that glows in the dark. Okay, so you can also, in the RF Finder selection, you can select the bands and the modes. It can let you select DMR, FM, whatever you want. And that at least lets you keep narrowing down your search. So I figured I'll just worry about 2-meter repeaters, and because I'll just be doubling the number of stations out there if I try, and they may not any of them be accessible anyway. So next. Okay, so then there's another program there, rffinder.net, worldwide coverage, $10 a year, directly interfaces with RT systems. So that's like, use it. That's the best one. That's what I ended up using. You can plot along the route, you can break up the route, you can select the distance off the road, bands and modes, and you can add waypoints. So I would say the conclusion of the talk is use rffinder.net and use the RT systems, and that's the best way to go unless you want to knock yourself out. I mean, life is short, and there's plenty of other things to do than programming radios. But as I say, I spent a day or two on this project. Next. Okay, so, but again, this is just another screen of and you can do this for other countries too, I suppose, if you're going off to some Caribbean island and you want to drag your little portable with your handheld, which may or may not be legal, you can at least find the stations. Next. Okay, it does, as you can see, it does DMR. Here, there's your information. Club Stanford Amateur Radio, 447.125, and all your information. I'm not sure it's all correct. Who would contact Robert?
Yeah, it looks like they mixed up.
KB.
It's a different
No,
club.
those are the guys from the state police recruiter, state police hand club that put in.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Next.
So at this point, they should probably reference some state.
Okay, that's more of that. Oh, that's Norwalk. There's their listing for both of their stations here. The FM and
And some
2
of those
meters.
are the same ones that we have, like North America.
What is the P-Star list been look like?
I didn't. It has. You can do it. I didn't do it. Next. Okay, so That's just another, if you go to the another box, RF Finder web search, and that's how you would, this menu pops up if you're going through the RT system software, instead of that pretty menu with the map and all that, this menu, shorter menu comes up. Once you click OK, it'll essentially download it right onto your screen. Now, next, so I combined a number of files, each in a different bank, into cut and paste into a long download, because when you download to your radio, you've got to download the whole package as one fell swoop. You can't, it's not that easy to edit. This software is not going to edit what's in your radio. It's just going to overwrite whatever. You can upload from your radio, but this will, once you download, it'll wipe out any other programming you've got in your radio. Again, this is what I compiled for the trip. There's us, W1EE and Norwalk, and then I tried, this keeps going at pretty much by a distance from your starting point, so it would take me all the way down to New York City on this load. If you do use this software, make sure that you set up a blank file before you do anything. Just name a blank file, because you're going to want to. There's bugs. I mean, it's not. There's always little bugs. Not a great big bug, but if you have the search results and you don't have a blank file to copy it into, it just kind of hangs. The program hung for me, so. But I could copy and paste from the search result into a blank file in this RT system spreadsheet. Next. Okay, so this is the adapter here. This has the electronics. There's a mini DIN plug, USB. That's the dongle. Plugs into the back of the FT7900. Large numbers of cables, software for each model, and they're all $50 a package. And they're registered too. They make it a little, it's a little hard to like loan them out. You go to your friend's house and program it at their location, because there's something about it that let me to believe that I couldn't just give you the whole disc and stuff, but maybe I can. I don't know. Anyway, if anyone wants to try it, I've used it. You could call me if you want to try it, but you have to have the same model. Next. All right, so there's my radio, and it had to turn that dial in the setup till I got the word clone. Then it would progress into doing a download. The download took, for 500 stations, it took 10, 15 minutes. It wasn't like snap. It was wasting time there. Next. So those are the modes that I have to see, that I had described in the earlier slide, that in the steps of programming this thing. Next. So the last thing says verify that the radio says RX. Click OK to start, and then it just went and went and went. Next. Okay, now here's another program, K5EHX.net, and it has a number of formats, CSV, KNL, Travel Plus, RT System. So it will format the data, and you can plot a route. In this program, we're not there. They have Norwalk, and yet they have your 440, but they don't have W1EE. So I said, well, this one's not too complete, so I didn't do a lot with this. Next. Then I decided, oh, all right, so I've gone to all this intellectual effort to program the other radio, so that's the other little guy I own, this, what is it, FT90 or something, D-Star. I bought it a few years ago from one of the club members, and I haven't really done much with it, but it's always good to know it's there. Now this cable USB 29A, that apparently is usable with more than one radio. But again, you need software. If you just buy the software or you just buy the cable, it's a little bit of a savings. In this case, plugged into the headset jack. There's two programming cables for this radio. One plugs into the data port, and one plugs into the headset jack. And reading the literature, it indicated, well, this was slightly more flexible, that there were other features with the other cable. Again, this is all, I don't know if it's important or not. It depends on what you guys are doing. Next. All right, so then we have this, here's the spreadsheet that came out of K5EHX.net. And wasn't quite in the format of RT systems, but this is an Excel spreadsheet of its data dump. Next. Okay, so as I said, you can rearrange columns if you want to use that particular program to match what's needed for the programming software. Next. Okay, the K5EHX uses Google Maps, and as I said, it's missing us, and a relatively basic menu, but this is a volunteer program, so there's, you know, this is the menu, that little strip, routes. You can put in the route, and it'll calculate and get you what, you know, some information. They're all worth playing with. I mean, it's, you know, depends what you want to do with your time. Next. Now, the other major program, which looked pretty good, was artsidepub.com, and they produce a repeater directory also for a fee. I mean, this is like $30 or something like that. And I'm a member now for the year at least. I don't know whether I'll cough it up next year, probably not. But they have a map book. Repeater map book contains locations of every open repeater throughout the U.S. Now, I don't know how it compares with the ARRL directory, so as you can see, next. So that was my approximate route. It's $20 a year. You can use it for free too, but you supposed to get a few more features. So I paid the $20 because I wanted to get this over with. They have some of our repeaters. Again, they don't list us as a DMR, so that they would need to be contacted to update their directory. Next. Okay, so this is the RT Systems packages. They're all $49, and there's variations. Again, they're FT7900, FT7500. You can buy the cable alone for $30. You can get different extension cables. Next. Okay, so then I was looking for the IC80, which is my little guy, and I bought this system, the blue cable there. Again, they had two cables, the USB 29A, and it says it programs the IC80 and many other Icon models, handheld and mobile. So I said, well, okay. And the other cable is just for the IC80, the RT505, and it works with a limited few other Icon radios. So, but every brand there, Baofeng and ICOM and Kenwood, and whatever you've got, they've apparently spent the time to build these. I mean, there's like 750,000 hams in the United States, so there is a market out there for ham radio gear. I mean, it's worth somebody's time to do this, because you're not going to do it yourself. Next. Okay. So I'm doing the sales pitch for them. Again, each program for a specific model. Next. Summary. There's plenty of online help for mobile programming. Just Google the subject and this stuff will drop in your lap. The databases are not always complete. We need to notify these databases about the specifics of our operation. RT Systems works. RFFinder.net is integrated with the RT Systems. If you have a long trip, remember the memory in your radio is limited. I came up the first time with more than 1,000 stations, and I said, this is not going to work. That's why I started reducing the width of the search to virtually like a mile from the interstate. Because how far are you really going to get? This is hilly. For the most part, it's hilly country. I went to Pennsylvania, Virginia, to the mountains in Virginia, West Virginia's mountains. Kentucky is beautiful, I gotta say. I was blown away how pretty it is out there. All those horse farms near Lexington. We drove through Lexington. It's a pretty plush looking town. Okay, so you break up your trips into segments, you use memory banks, and you gotta write the list, so when you're in each region of your trip, you've gotta select the bank, and even that isn't straightforward. I found with that FT7900, I followed their instructions for bank selection. Sometimes it would switch, and sometimes it didn't want to switch. It's just not, these things are just not that clear. Don't take your eyes off the road, let your co-pilot run the rig, and talk to your family first. Next. Okay, now, this is a completely separate little thing, but I wanted to monitor my signal on my HF, and so I built a little box here, and Ernie had given me an old scope a couple of years ago, and it was sitting around. I gotta find something. I was gonna give it away to another guy, and I said, oh, I know what, I need to see what's going out on the air. So I built a little box. Next. And inside my little box, this is essentially a current transmitter. There's a I have a piece of 6,000 volt insulated wire between the two SO whatever.
239.
Yeah, 239 connectors. It's a little bud box that I had lying around, and I really did this thing first class. I drilled and tapped each of those holes with 440 screws, and I got through 15 of the 16 holes before the tap broke. And so I've got like 20 turns of wire. This is the ferrite noise suppression bead as the transformer. So the center conductor is a piece of heavily insulated wire. 20 turns, and I've terminated. This I found on. This is not an invention by any means. This is on. You can find this on the web. You know, different hams post stuff like this. So it's 20 turns of wire terminated in a 50 ohm resistor, and you can look at your RF on a wideband oscilloscope. And I just built a little demodulator, a little just a single diode and RC filter to see if I could capture the envelope. But then I watched this. I was transmitting on a PSK31, and you could really see the modulation of your signal going out. It was quite nice. It's just kind of what I wanted to see. So it doesn't take long to make one of these. Just make sure you have a piece of insulated wire that's appropriate for the power level you're running. But it took an hour or so to 2 hours to build this thing. And I think the RF connectors, one of you guys gave me in the club, so thank you, was handing out extra connectors one year. And so it all became useful. Next. All right, so there's what you need to build if you want to. It's not in your handout for some reason. It's a simple enough thing to do. Breadboard it, but I'd suggest that it really goes in a nice shielded box so the RF isn't running all over the place. And I just hooked it up. I have a 2-volt signal on the scope, and putting less than 100 watts out. Nice strong signal, nice. If you want to, sweep fast, you could look at your RF. If you sweep it, at 10 or 20 milliseconds of division, you'll see the formation of your modulated waveform, whether it's voice or PSK. You'll just see that the pattern that's going out on the air. Next, if any. Okay, yeah, there. So that's a signal. It was very hard to photograph it when I put it on slow sweep because the shutter on these on the iPhone, and in fact most of my cameras, is way too fast and it's way too bright to just totally burn out your sensor on your phone. Next, if any. That's it. Thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah, you want
Yes.
to comment on what you saw in the eclipse and your experience?
Yeah, okay, so my cousin Dan Rudin, he's got a couple of Emmys he's a